On today's show, Trajan Langdon and the Detroit Pistons have been busy. Why it was time to move on from Monty Williams. Why JB Bickerstaff was the right choice to replace him in the head coach's chair. Plus, how are the Pistons going to utilize their cap space in NBA free agency? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, I love sports. I love them so much. I never really want them to stop, right? But as you got the playoffs winding down and you get fewer and fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like the way you wanted to, look, FanDuel lets you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app and dream up big bets anytime you're in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Right now, you can head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and take a look at the outright betting favorites for the NBA championship next season. The Boston Celtics at plus 300 to repeat next year. The Denver Nuggets behind them at plus 750. And in third place, after freshly signing Paul George, the Philadelphia 76ers at plus 850. So for all those odds and so much more, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Pistons, Ku Khahil. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcast or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Pistons for what has been a busy little stretch here for the Detroit Pistons. Ku, let's get right into it. I mean, let's start with the biggest move potentially of all, which was the decision to move on from Monty Williams, despite still being on the hook for 5 years and $65 million on that pretty outrageous contract that he signed just a year ago. Why was it the right decision to move on from Monty?
The easy answer is they won 14 games last year. They had the worst season in franchise history. They had the worst losing streak in a single NBA season. I believe 27 or 28 games in a row. Along with that, in just 1 year, Monty made a lot of, I would characterize it as enemies. I don't feel like it takes a rocket scientist to understand that you hire somebody or sign somebody to a 5-year deal for that much money, and after a year you move on from him. Obviously, he must have turned some people off. Throughout the year, just didn't, by the end of his time, there were a lot of people that were okay with obviously it happening. So just didn't work on the basketball court, and I don't think it worked off the court either.
Now, the new guy stepping into the head coaching role for the Pistons, fresh from the Cleveland Cavaliers, is none other, and I don't even know if the dust has settled from that situation yet, but JB Bickerstaff. What does Bickerstaff bring to the Pistons as the new head coach?
I'm wondering the same thing. I don't know as much about JB Bickerstaff. I know that he obviously, the Pistons were looking at possibly getting a first-time head coach in Sean Sweeney or Michael Nori, but they went again for the third straight time, which is, it's a bit of a heated topic going on in the Pistons community that a lot of people wanted the Pistons to get a new up-and-coming young head coach who hadn't had a job yet and give him a chance instead of going after another former head coach like they did with SVG, like they did with Dwayne Casey, like they did with Monty Williams. Instead, they do it again with JB Bickerstaff.
These retreads where you just keep hiring back the same guys who didn't work in other locations, right? So
there's a little bit of concern about that, but it's a new era with Trajan Langdon as the president of basketball operations. I'm going to give it a fair shot. Again, I don't know much about Bickerstaff, so I'm going to leave my thoughts wide open until I talk with some guys from the Cleveland scene. I obviously talk with Locked On Cavs, but I just know that is the heated topic right now, which is, why didn't they get a new head coach, and why did they decide to go after another coach that had just previously been fired that same offseason? So it's an interesting discussion.
You mentioned Trajan Langdon there for a second. What's kind of your evaluation of him so far, kind of being in the driver's seat for Detroit to this point?
I'll say one thing about him so far is that I think fans are going to like him in pressers a lot more than they like Troy Weaver. He talks very confidently. He's very transparent. And he feels he feels very confident in what he's saying. It doesn't seem like he's sugarcoating anything. Doesn't seem like he doesn't believe what he's saying. He's very straightforward, straight to the point, and very transparent. So I think people are going to like that. outside of that, I think he's playing a lot of his cards close to the chest. You don't really, I feel like a lot of people don't really know what the Pistons are going to do for the rest of free agency and for the rest of the offseason. The Ron Holland pick was a surprise to everybody, including Ron Holland. Ron Holland did not expect to go to Detroit. He was shocked. So no one really knows what Trajan's about yet. No one really knows what he's trying to accomplish. Again, JB Bickerstaff was a bit of a shock too. People thought it was between Sean Sweeney and Michael Norrie, and now JB Bickerstaff happened. So I think something you're learning early, Pistons fans, is that last regime, a lot of stuff leaked out, and you kind of had an idea of what was going on. It seems like so far that won't be the case with Trajan Langdon. They really like to play their cards close to the chest.
Yeah, it feels like Langon is just going to keep throwing curveballs at us, all the way down. Look, we might, one big domino for the Pistons that is yet to fall as of this recording is what we're talking about, potentially a rookie max extension for Cade Cunningham. We had some maybe potentially conflicting reports from The Athletic and then ESPN, so TBD on whether or not that ultimately comes through. But Detroit does have a ton of spending power in free agency this offseason, the most of any team outside of the Philadelphia 76ers. As it stands right now, Ku, what would be the best case moving forward for the Pistons in utilizing this cap space, right? Are they a team that's looking to maybe rent out some of that cap space like they've already done in the Tim Hardaway Jr. deal, or is this a team that should be looking to make some moves and add some talented players, like possibly pursuing Isaiah Hartenstein from the Knicks?
Yeah, I think they should be going after players that can help them win now, not mortgaging the entire future for right now. But with the money you have in free agency, I don't think it can be another last offseason where you just are basically kicking the can down the road again and seeing how bad this season could possibly go. I'm not a fan of that. I think they should be going after Hartenstein. But as of right now, it sounds like he's meeting with OKC tonight. So who knows if he even leaves OKC without a contract. So we'll see if the Pistons even get a chance at that. I think they need to get a starting center with some rim protection, a veteran center. They missed out on Andre Drummond. They missed out on Nicholas Claxton. They might miss out on Hartenstein if he leaves OKC with a deal. So they have a lot of money. Who knows? Again, who knows what they're going to do with it? Trajan's mentioned taking on contracts and trades for assets. But looking around the league, I'm just not sure where that's going to happen at. So we're a bit confused, or just, I guess the best word is just interested in what the Pistons are going to do, because really no one has any idea what's going to happen in the next few days.
Who are some of the other targets out there that the Pistons could potentially have their eyes on, or that you think that they should have their eyes on outside of Isaiah Hartenstein if that target kind of falls through?
Well, one of them just signed. Jonas Valanciunas just signed with the Wizards as we're recording this, so that was one of them. So struck out there.
Alex Sarr, Jonas Valanciunas front court. Let's go. All right, well, go tune into Locked On Wizards for all the reactions to that one. But
they missed out on Sarr too. They fell in the draft, so they didn't get Sarr either. So they're missing out on all kinds of stuff. But Najee Marshall, it sounds like a guy they might go after. Tobias Harris, I think, is an obvious one that sounds like they're going after. Outside of that, again, I'm not sure. A lot of guys that sound like they were interested in signed with their teams before free agency even started. Malik Monk went back to Sacramento. That was one of their targets. Nicholas Claxton went back to Brooklyn. That was one of their targets. Again, it sounds like it's a good chance. We'll see how it ends tonight. That Hartenstein may leave with a contract with OKC, and the Pistons may just be left with doing trades to soak up the cap space, because a lot of their targets may not even be available for them after 24 hours in free agency. So Najee Marshall, Tobias Harris, and then the trade market. That sounds like what they're really going to be trying to do. I don't know where that's going to happen at. I've been looking through Fanspo for days. I'm doing it just like everybody else. I don't know where this contract that's overpaid, but still a really good player that you still also get assets with. I don't know where that contract exists, but if they find it, good on them.
I find it really curious, and hopefully you can clear this up for us before we wrap up our segment. But just, you mentioned going after a center, right? Going after a starting caliber center, getting a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein on the free agency market. But the Pistons have Jalen Duren. They have Isaiah Stewart. Like, what would the future hold for those? Now, it might not look like the Pistons, maybe they won't be able to go get a guy to replace one or both of those, but what's up with those two guys? Like, what would the future hold for them? Are the Pistons just not very high on them, or they have, what's going on there with those two names?
So I think they very much like Isaiah Stewart. They value him. A lot of other NBA teams do as well. So I think that he may be in the trade market to get some assets because, again, Trajan's really mentioned wanting to get assets after the last regime really didn't get any. So I think that's a possibility with Isaiah Stewart. With Jalen Duren, I've heard all offseason that one of the main things, if not the main thing that really put off the Pistons organization was the lack of rim protection, the lack of defense from their 5 position. So they've been linked to Claxton, they've been linked to Hartenstein, they've been linked to obviously Sarr in the draft. They were even linked to Jonas Valanciunas. So it's like they are trying to get a starting center. I don't know what that means for Duren. I don't believe that you can have Stu and Duren on the roster if you're also getting a starting center as well. I think Stu's best position is a backup 5. So I think if they do end up getting one of these starting centers to come over to Detroit, whether it's through trade or through signing, I do think it means that one of those guys are likely gone next year.
What other moves will be on the horizon for the Detroit Pistons this offseason? Will we see one of Jalen Duren or Isaiah Stewart on the trading block? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Pistons. Ku, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Appreciate it.